I'll do so on a lighter note, albeit not an insignificant note, since we are observing Women's Month in South Africa. And as a woman, I just wish to express that it really gives me a great honor and pleasure to always welcome you to our regular media briefings, which are led by the Minister of Energy and Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. And these, in essence, colleagues, are because the Minister, truly and immensely values fostering open and transparent communication with yourselves as members of the Fourth Estate, but also he values accountability to the public at large, particularly as it pertained, to the more difficult times that we experienced in the very far past, more than 100 days ago, when we were in the thick of load shedding. But now that we are in this new administration, we are in this new Ministry of Energy and Electricity, and of course more than 130 days without load shedding, in keeping with that planned maintenance of that commitment to being open and transparent to members of the media and the public, we will be continuing with these media briefings. And then colleagues, over and above that, the Minister's appreciation and value for these engagements, he also truly values women empowerment. In our ministry this month, Women's Month, we will be hosting an engagement with women in energy. There are women in energy that are truly driving efforts towards South Africa's energy security, which is government's priority, as driven by the ministry. And with that, colleagues, I must also indicate that we are joined by our Deputy Minister, Ms. Samantha Graham Murray, a woman, of course. And then next to her are familiar faces to this platform. We've got colleagues from Eskom. We've got Mr. Eric Shunmakam, who works with the head of generation, Mr. Begi Ngumalo. And then next to him, we've got Ms. Daphne Mokoena, who is the spokesperson at Eskom. And then we also have Mr. Silas Zimu from the Ministry of Energy and Electricity. Colleagues, with that, I wish to invite the Minister to the podium to kick us off with the business of the day.
Thank you very much, Tsakani, and good morning to members of the media. And again, let me express my most profuse appreciation at your efforts to always make time to be with us every other Monday so that you are able to convey to the general public the state of the grid. But I did say the last time that in the context of the 7th administration, we'll be reporting very broadly on the energy situation in the country. And some of the cadence of these meetings, these briefings, could be even weekly, so that we are able to take you through some of the pertinent issues that are receiving urgent attention in the ministry. So thank you very much for joining, and good morning to the viewers back at home. The last time I was on this podium, I made the point that we were doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to address a new phenomenon, and that is the issue of load reduction. And that has to do with downstream capacity constraints as it relates to reticulation. I'm going to show you the numbers that we don't have a problem on the generation side. We are experiencing new problems on the reticulation side. Mainly municipalities, and Eskom is also playing in that space. And it's an area that requires our urgent attention. I did make the point that we have engaged with SALGA, and we are pulling together with SALGA on the best way of ensuring that we protect the interest of municipalities, we safeguard the interest of ESCOM. I've made the point that ESCOM is owed collectively about 78 billion rands by municipalities, and in return, municipalities are owed collectively about 349 billion rands by various categories of customers. So it's individual households, it's businesses, it's also government. So we require a solution that attends to all of those issues, but also to ensure that when we experience the phenomenon of load reduction, you are able to minimize, if you like, collateral damage to the extent that is possible. What do I mean by collateral damage? There are people who are very obedient, diligent customers who pay their monthly bills diligently, very religious in paying those monthly accounts, but they are also affected by the phenomenon of load reduction. So it's important that we protect everyone, but also ensure that we protect the poor households, those who genuinely can't afford because of economic constraints, a number of reasons, and of course they don't have the means and the ability to pay their monthly account. So it's important that we are able to protect those. We also know that now there are fatal shortcomings with regards to free basic electricity that we have observed. At least we know that there's about 10 million households in this country that qualifies for free basic electricity. But what we know is that only 2 million are receiving this free basic electricity as a result of challenges on the municipal side. And that has to do largely with the rate at which they are registering the indigents on their indigent register so that they can benefit from this free basic electricity. And yet municipalities are receiving this grant. So I think it's important that we are able to resolve this question so that we are able to protect the poor. As the President has mentioned, one of the priorities of the 6th, 7th administration, priority number 2, is fighting poverty and also the escalating cost of living. And the cost of utilities is a big part of household spend in this country. So we are addressing that question to ensure that the 8 million plus households that are entitled to this free basic electricity that are not getting it, and yet this grant is given to municipalities and also to ESCOM, gets to benefit from that. We are going to resolve that with SALGA. I must say that we have found that in the presidency of Mr. Stofile, the president of SALGA, we've got an excellent ally, and we are more than confident with the leadership of local government that we are going to resolve this question. And then the second point I want to mention in relation to this is that as the ministry, we have been engaging with some of the innovations led by private sector, and we have found an innovation that we think can be the best template of helping us to resolve this question going into the future. And this has been tried and tested in about 3 municipalities. The one is Beyers Naudé in the Eastern Cape. The other 2 municipalities are Kemisberg and also Namakoi in the Northern Cape. What this solution does, it helps to resolve a number of questions. The first one is to make sure that the municipalities do comply with the grant conditions for the write-off. And then the second one is that even if you are not, have not applied for a write-off, it is possible for you to be able to do 2 things as a result of this intervention. The first one is to pay your debts, and then the second one is to make sure that you are able to pay your current account without diminishing the financial viability of municipalities. So what we have sought to do is to nominate about 2 municipalities per province that are going to be candidate of the second pilot of these municipalities, where we are going to ensure that we stress test this solution. And we'll have working with SALGA and the various provinces, just get municipalities, but the municipalities that are going to receive priorities are the ones that are the top debtors to ESCOM. The ones that owe the most amount of money, those are the ones that we are going to target, ensure that we work with them. Of course, the municipalities must opt in. So we don't necessarily have an instrument to force municipalities to come into this space. But we have found that working with SALGA, and I'm sure working with Minister Tlhabisa, we should find a solution on how best to address this situation. I'm making this point that in addition to the electricity pricing policy that I made mention of the last time, the fact that the electricity has increased almost 400% in the last 10 years or so, it is important that we find innovative solutions to address this question. But it's also important that for the households that can afford, the middle income households, they are also experiencing severe pressures. So it's important that we are able to provide relief to those households, and not just the protection of the poor, but everyone across the board. I made the point that we want to achieve two things with the electricity pricing policy. The first one is to ensure that electricity is affordable to low-income households, and the second one is to make sure that it's cost-reflective for all customers. And that's what we're working on with the Deputy Minister, Samantha Graham-Murray, the rest of the team, and I'm confident that we should be able to come back to the country and indicate what are those measures that we are putting in place to ensure that the electricity is affordable, and in fact we don't experience conditions of energy poverty. And then the second part I really want to mention, and I'll expand this with a bit more detail, is that yes, we are seeing an exceptional performance on the generation side as a result of the measures that have been put into place. Like I said, this has been engineered, is orchestrated, is deliberate, and of course all of these things are coming together. It's a constellation of the efforts, the people issues, the engineering issues, the financing issues, and also addressing issues of malfeasance across the board at the ESCOM, of course led by Dr. Mteto as the chair of the board and Mr. Dan Marokane as the group CEO. So it's a constellation of that. But I think there's also shining, if you like, examples of what can be achieved from a situation of the lowest moment to what we're beginning to see as, if you like, green shoots. And I really want to elevate 3 specific power stations that have seen the most exceptional improvement from the lows that they've experienced over a period of time. So if you had to do an analysis between the period of March this year to August, is that there's 3 great performers. So they are the ones who have been consistent at performing. So I'm not mentioning those ones. And in that category, really, I'm talking about Kusile, Majuba, and Matla. And then there's a category of power stations that have been experiencing significant challenges. But we have seen now with the stewardship, the leadership at those power stations, they are giving us the results that we expect of them. The workers there at these 3 power stations have been hard at it to ensure that we are able to see the kind of improvements that we are seeing. I was seeing some of the mainstream publications saying ESCOM is producing more than what is required. Of course, that's great for the economy. We will tell you when we say we're out of the woods, when we say we have resolved load shedding. We'll tell you at the right time when we're able to substantiate that in numbers. But these stations have been key. The first station is Tutuka. Tutuka has experienced a significant amount of challenges over a period of time. I've reported about the experiences of Tutuka on multiple occasions when I was here, and I made the point that the ESCOM leadership took the decision to deploy Mr. Bruce Moyo to go and lead the turnaround at Tutuka. We are seeing those results now. Just during this period, I've mentioned March to August, the unplanned capacity loss factor, that is the amount of time that these units have been out of generation, not giving us the megawatts, has reduced by about 29%. So that's significant from where Tutuka started at. So they've moved from 2,411 megawatts. So essentially these are megawatts that we are losing, we are not generating anything as a result of the units being down. And today, as I speak to you, the team has brought it down to 949 megawatts, and they continue to make the kind of improvements that we are making, that we are expecting. So we really want to say thank you very much to Mr. Bruce Moyo and the rest of the Tutuka team. Of course, myself and the DM will be visiting the power station to express our most sincere appreciation on behalf of the entire country for the work that they are doing, the kind of improvements that we are seeing. And then the second one is Kendal. So as you know, Kendal, there were major issues with regards to exceeding the emission standards. So there had to be a number of interventions that had to be made. The first major intervention that Mr. Nxumalo made as the executive in charge of generation was to change the leadership there. And then he brought a seasoned power station manager in the form of Ms. Tshepiso Temo, who has done exceptional work there and essentially lifted the morale of the team, reconfigured the constitution of the leadership team at Kendal. So what are the results that we are seeing? Today, Ms. Tshepiso has made it possible that we are able to reduce the unplanned capacity loss factor. We moved it from 2,500 megawatts out, and now we're sitting at about 919 megawatts that are out. And of course, they continue to do exceptional work. So we really want to say to Tshepiso there and the rest of the Kendal team, please keep up the excellent work. I'm saying this, conveying this word of appreciation on behalf of the country and, of course, by extension, the President, on the work that you are doing. And then the third of these emerging stars is our station at Kriel, and it also happens to be led by another woman in the form of Mr. Morongwe Rapasha. We have seen exceptional results. The reduction in the unplanned capacity loss factor has gone down 53%, from 1,400 to about 508 megawatts. So I'm making this point just to illustrate the fact that the people issues do matter, and the ESCOM leadership has taken that into account. And the fact that you place the most seasoned, experienced, loyal, patriotic individuals to be at the helm of those power stations has given us the kind of results that are required. And of course, just a coincidence that 2 of the 3 happen to be women, and I'm mentioning this during the Women's Month, but they are there, Tshepiso and Morongwe, on the basis of the exceptional competence and the experience that they've accumulated over time. These are the kind of results we are seeing. I was saying now to the team that perhaps if we could have 80% of the station managers being women, I'm sure the EAF could be above 80%, close to 90%. So thank you very much to the work that the team is doing. But the point I'm making really is that we are seeing exceptional results. I want to take a bit of time just to say the following before I give you the details of the performance of the system. That the President has put in place, if you like, South Africa's commitment to a just energy transition. This is on the back of the nationally determined contributions. These are voluntary, if you like, targets that we have set ourselves on the back of the Copenhagen discussions at the COP, the fact that as opposed to a top-down approach, there must be a bottom-up approach. By that I mean the world powers and all the major countries in the world, in their quest to ensure that we reduce the effects of greenhouse gas emissions, and by extension address the issues of climate change, because there's a rich body of literature that suggests that there's a correlation between greenhouse gas emission and climate change. And for us to be able to address that, it is important that, as opposed to negotiators at a global level determining what these national targets should be, it's important that it is countries that must commit to that on their own, having taken account of their own local conditions, but still set out ambitious targets on how they can achieve this just energy transition. I'm mentioning this because in the 7th administration, so essentially it's a department that is a primary and preeminent driver of that, and of course the President maintains the stewardship of this program. It is important that we are able to lift this conversation, and in the next iteration of the update will go deeper into the kind of milestones that we have achieved, but also what will constitute the agenda of the JIP program in the 7th administration. I'm making this point because it is the intention of the ministry that we are mainstreaming this conversation. So it's part of a bigger public discourse, but of course the country is committed to a set of objectives. Like I said, this is going to help us to ensure that we achieve a well-managed transition to a low-carbon economy, and then it is concretized. So in a very firm plan, what we call the JET investment plan, that will span over a period 2023 to 2027. But what we then did in November of last year, to give concrete meaning, if you like, to programatize this intervention, we then agreed on a JET implementation plan. Because I think one of the major shortcomings of government is that there's an articulation of plans, and then we're very thin on how that is going to be implemented. The resources from a people point of view, the financing, and also the kind of regulatory adjustments that are necessary to ensure that you give effect to this. So we approved the JET implementation plan. So it's the intention of the ministry to ensure that we pull our peers together and ensure that finally we get to a point where there's a greater level of appreciation in the country that this plan is going to help us to a low-carbon economy and protecting our sovereign interests. So it's not something at the margins. It's central to this conversation, including the issues around the distribution side. I think there's some degree of grant, concession, funding that sits in this JET implementation plan that has not been fully exploited. Some of the major powers have come on board, made money available, started at about 8.5 billion US dollars. It's gone up to about 12 billion US dollars over a period of time because there's other players who have come on board. So it's important that we're able to show our bona fides as a country, of course, protecting national interest. What this funding does not impose, if you like, what this trajectory is. It's us who have determined the just energy plan. So it's important that on the back of that implementation plan, like I said, it's adopted by government, we're able to pull everyone along. And of course, it straddles across the entire value chain, from generation, transmission, and distribution. We have not fully exploited that. We are going to do it, so, and then we'll keep the country abreast on the kind of work that is required. We know that the scale of investments that is required for us to achieve the ambitions of this just transition, it's about 1.5 trillion rands for us to be able to set the ambitions that we have set for ourselves. So it's a huge ticket. So we know that the fiscals won't be able to carry that. So it's important that we look at bespoke financing instruments to support this. And in fact, these instruments do exist within the context of the JIP. And we really want to give it significant and additional momentum. It's going to help us on the issues of transmission. It's going to help us on the issues of distribution. And of course, we want to assure the country that we'll enter those discussions with the interest of the country at heart. And I know for a fact that also the players in that space really want to help South Africa. And South Africa is the one that determines the agenda. They don't determine an agenda on our part. So there's, if you like, an intersection of interest between what we want to do and what these major powers have brought onto the table. And like I said, they will do that in the best interest of the country. And of course, to be able to action this, we have put together, there's the project management unit in the presidency is the one that is working very closely on this. Of course, the IMC as an interministerial structure will determine essentially what that roadmap is with regards to execution. And essentially, that interministerial committee will focus really on 4 areas. So the first one will be providing political leadership for the implementation of the JIP. Of course, at the bureaucratic level, administrative and technical level, the PMU will be running with that. It's important that we are able to provide aerial political cover to ensure that every step of the way we are able to meet the national interest. And the JIP does exactly that. And that's why we really want to move with speed. Because if we don't do that, we are likely going to first miss an opportunity as a country to help us use these resources to address some of the attendant challenges that are confronting us. And of course, at the secondary level, it's really about the bona fides of a country, our country. When we commit to something and other players come on board to support that which you have committed to, and you don't get to deliver. So I think it's about the credibility of the country as a credible partner in any transaction. So I think it's important that we are able to resolve those two questions, and we've got every ambition to achieve that. And then the other one is to ensure that, I mean, this is a fluid space. From time to time, we will review and engage on the JIP progress reports, but also ensure that we are able to support its execution. And that's why we're going to mainstream it as part of a national conversation. As we give you updates, we are able to share with you what is this JIP, what does it, what do we stand to benefit as a country, as communities in where you have coal-fired power stations, so that there's a greater level of appreciation on the work that we are doing. And also want to identify and align on ways to unblock policy challenges to the JET implementation plan. To the extent that there are policy hurdles that undermine our ability to execute, I think this IMC will do exceptionally well to remove those so that we are able to move with speed, appreciating, if you like, what is a sovereign interest. So there is no conflict between what sovereign interest is and the JIP. It's us who determined what the implementation plan is, and when we did that, we are alive to what these interests are, so that we are able to proceed with speed. And of course, to the extent that is necessary, we'll make recommendations to Cabinet on how best to improve the implementation of the JIP. But as the President has instructed, it's important that we are able to move with speed and resolve these challenges across the value chain. And then as I move towards the end, just on the generation performance, of course, exceptional performance. I really want to caution that load shedding is not behind us. I think it's an important point to make. Of course, in the next 3 weeks or so, Eskom will be sharing with you what the summer outlook is. We still are buoyant about the performance of this generation plant. I've mentioned to you the emerging the emerging stars rather from the fleet of the power stations. I mentioned Tutuka, Kriel, and Kendall. Having said all of the above, I think we need to caution against any early declaration just to decree load shedding as being behind us. We do everything possible to resolve this question, but the numbers do indicate that we are within touching distance. A statement that I've been making from time to time, the fact that we are expecting Medupi Unit 4 to give us 800 megawatts, bring fire up Kusile Unit number 6, another 800 megawatts. We're hoping to get an extension of life of Kubek Unit number 2. We succeeded on Unit number 1. It's not automatic, you are getting it on Unit number 2. We're not complacent. We're doing everything by the book, ensuring that cross all the T's, dot all the I's, be diligent in what we submit to the nuclear regulator of the country. We are still optimistic of getting that extension of life for 20 years of Kubek Unit number 2. It will give us an additional 980 megawatts. So the point I'm making is that we do expect that by end of August this year, just from the Eskom fleet, we should be getting an additional 2,500 megawatts. So the UCLF has come down by 8.8 percentage points. If you look where we are now, the UCLF, remember when I say UCLF, the unplanned capacity loss factor, I'm talking about the unreliability of these units, that is units just failing on their own, or the second one is their efficiency, the extent to which they approximate their design capacity. So those are the two, if you like, variables that we want to bring down. We are bringing them down successfully, even much better than we had expected. I do make the point that we have registered about 8.8 percentage point. And if you look at the, in terms of megawatts, so we have brought that from what in terms of the winter outlook, we had said the optimistic case, we had said that, ESCOM had said that we think that optimistically, we should bring it down to about 14,000 megawatts. If we are at 14,000 megawatts, there will not be load shedding during the winter period. We know there's not been load shedding during the winter period. But a significant figure is the following, is that as opposed to the 14,000 megawatts, that was the optimistic case, what we have been registering is about 10,500 megawatts. So essentially about a 4,000 improvement from our own optimistic case. I put differently, if you compare the same period last year, we're sitting at about 15,500 of UCL megawatts of UCLF. Now, as I speak to you, it's about 10,508. Again, a 5,000 megawatts improvement. That's significant. And of course, it gets to be reflected in the EAF. There's a correlation there. The lower the UCLF, and of course, assuming that the planned capacity loss factor is the same, then you are going to see an improvement in your EAF. And of course, we can see that the EAF has improved from the same period of last year. We're sitting at 55%, 55.32%, and now we're at 63.22%, a significant improvement. And if you look at just the month of August, or starting from the 5th until today, I think we're sitting at about 67%. So that's a tremendous improvement. So I want to say to the country, we're on the right path. We have always believed in this strategy, like I said, orchestrated, deliberate, and we're seeing the kind of results that we're seeing. So we are confident about the ability for us to continue on this path. And also this with the planned maintenance at about 5,600 megawatts. If you look at the same period, the winter period last year, I think we're at about 3,500 megawatts. So we're still up on planned maintenance, but the EAF continues to show the kind of improvements that we're seeing. So it's thanks to what the team is doing there. And again, to represent it in other form, if your EAF is up, it means that you are less reliant on your open cycle gas turbine. So you are burning less and less of diesel. So we can say that we have, since the beginning of the financial year, we have brought down the use of diesel by 73%. So we have saved about 9.6 billion rands compared to the same period of last year. The same 1st of April to the 7th of June, we have spent 9.59 billion rand less than what was spent last year. So that's significant. And I think this is an important point to make, in that the more we improve the generation performance, it's going to find expression in the tariff increases. Because if your generation relies heavily on expensive forms of generation, it must be reflected in the tariff. We said that the tariff must be cost reflective. And in fact, if your cost, you are able to show to NERSA that, look, the performance of the units has deteriorated. As a result of that, I'm relying on burning diesel, and therefore I'm asking for this, for the following tariff increase. It's going to weigh heavy on the users in this country. So I'm confident that we're getting to a stage where really these are going to be what they are meant to be, peaking plants. They only come in as and when we need them. They are not there most of the time. And as you can see, the load factor, the amount of time that we've been calling on them, since the 1st of April, it averages about 4.8%. And if you look at the same period last year, we're using them about 20.6% of the time. So that's significant, that number. If you look at the kind of phenomenal progress we have made since the 1st of August, in fact, that number comes down dramatically. From that 4.82%, it has come almost halved to about 2.83%. So that's significant, because it's got the implications on what the tariff that the ESCOM will be asking for going forward. So we really are optimistic about the situation. But like I said, I think the one area that is now receiving attention is the issue of load reduction. And I don't want to suggest to the country and those that are affected by load reduction that is going to be an easy solve. It's going to be complicated. Like I said, we're balancing their interest as as consumers, the interest of municipalities, the interest of ESCOM, the protection of this infrastructure. But I'm confident that we are closer to finding that situation, and we are going to provide this, the relief that is needed to many households. I did make the point the last time that just on the ESCOM side, the number of households that are affected by this load reduction is about 360,000 against the 7 million household that ESCOM is servicing. So we're talking really about 5%. But that 5% matter because it's largely in poor areas. It's largely in informal areas. So it's important that we don't create an impression that we look catering for those who can afford the affluent areas and we are neglecting the poor areas. I want to send out a very strong message that we do everything possible to protect the interest of low-income earners and those who don't have the means really to support themselves so that they don't continue to be part of this collateral damage going forward. And of course, we do provide much deeper insights on what has been a month-to-month improvement with regards to the generation, what has been a weekly improvement. So essentially the net picture just reconfirms that they were on a good path. The net picture just confirms the efficacious nature of our intervention. It's giving us the kind of results that are desirable. And most of the households can see that. I'm saying most because you still have that load reduction. Because for other households, they've got 5 to 10 hours in a day where they don't have electricity. That situation is untenable. And the message like I'm making, as I reiterate the point I made earlier on, that's our focal point. So it's receiving our undivided attention, and in fact, it's urgent, the steps that we are taking. We need to pull local government with us so that we are able to find uniform solutions that are enduring, sustainable, and protects the interests of all the stakeholders. And of course, in rand value terms, I did make the point, if you look from month to month, that the spend on the diesel has really come down, and that's good for the ESCOM's own balance sheet, its liquidity. We can reinvest this money back into the people and reinvest this money back into this unit so that we continue to see the kind of phenomenal improvements that we have been seeing, and we stave off load shedding. Thank you very much, TK.
Thank you very much, Minister, for all the insight into really the actual improvements from a factual and science point of view. And with that, colleagues, I wish to open the floor to questions for clarity from members of the media. We'll start, as per our established protocol, with those who are with us in the room. And then Itumeleng will take us through the questions that have been shared online. Antoinette, I see your hand is up. Are there any other hands in the room? After Antoinette, we'll take Bafedile. Any other hands? So, okay. After you, sir, we'll take Itumeleng. Thanks.
Antoinette Slabert from Rapport. Minister, you say that the reduced use of OCGTs should be reflected in the tariff. And you've been very outspoken about the high tariffs. Now, ESCOM's tariff application is for an average of 36% increase, but that was compiled in very much different circumstances than we are experiencing now. Do you think that application should be reviewed before it's submitted to NERSA?
Good morning. My name is Bafedile Mwerani from EACA. So, Minister, there's an issue of prepaid electricity meters that may cease to function by the end of November. How far are the conversations between yourselves and other stakeholders? Because this might lead to some problems if it's not resolved. And the last question from me, it's about illegal connection. We have been going with City Power from here in Joburg in various areas that are illegally connected. How does that affect the power grid, and how are you resolving that?
morning, Minister and DM. Either one of you can take this question. This is Kgosientsho from Eyewitness News. My question ties in with local municipalities in terms of load reduction. I would like for you to further expand on that, and also if you could add on to the link regarding the 10 million households that qualify for free basic electricity, but only, I think, 2 million of those are receiving that basic electricity. What's the consequences for this, and how far are we with encouraging local municipalities to pay their debt to Eskom without affecting the local man?
Can we take the online questions, please?
Thank you, Tsakani. Good morning, colleagues. The first 5 questions are from Helmo Bruce from Independent Media, and one, which countries received power from Eskom and how much for each in June? And please send me the split between road and rail for Majuba coal deliveries, and how much money has been distributed from the JIP Program, and is the government engaged in the European Union on the carbon tax, and when will the results of the fracking test drill at Beaufort West be made public? And the following 2 questions are from Terence Klima, Engineering News. And number 1 is, are the pilot projects mentioned in relation to municipalities that owe money to Eskom distinct from the program launched by the National Treasury last year? And if so, what has become of the National Treasury scheme? And number 2, could the Minister please provide an update on the creation of the Ministry in the Department of Electricity and Energy? The roles and responsibilities been clearly defined between the Department of Electricity and Energy and the DMPR, and when will the post of the DG be advertised, and how many staff members will the Department of Electricity and Energy be absorbing from the DMRE? And why is the WIC 31 status report not available on the website? This question, Tsakani, again, is coming from Elmo Cruz from Independent Media. And we have Chris Yeland from E-Business Intelligence. And the question is, please, can the Minister advise progress on 6 areas? 1, separating the 2 departments, the DMRE and the DMPR, and DOEE. And number 2, defining the role of the DOEE and DMPR. I think these questions are repeating, my apologies. And number 3, the integrated energy plan. And number 4, integrated resource plan for electricity. Number 5, publishing of SA Renewable Energy Master Plan. And number 6, addressing the June 2016 gas cliff for industrial gas users. And what should be the last question for now is from Kale Cohen from News 24. The question is, what is the reduction in the average load factor for the coal fleet per month, year on year? Thank you.
Thanks, Takalani. I think that last question will be taken by Mr. Shunmagam. However, can you just repeat the last question from Helmo?
Thank you, Tsakani. The last question the last question from Helmo is, why is the week 31 status report not available on the website?
The which report?
I'm not sure about which report. Maybe we'll just ask so that at least the clarity can be provided. Maybe safe to say There's one that says, is ESCOM using pumped storage for peaking power? If yes, how many GWH in the past week? Maybe these questions are, they are related. And then the following one is the one that says, when will the testing on Medupi Unit 4 start? So I think it's just a correlation of questions, but we can ask for clarity from Helmo as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Please do seek clarity on Helmo's last question. I think Mr. Shunmakam will take the question on the pumped storage as well as the last question from Terence Creamer. And then the Minister will take the other questions. I'm sure he will delegate other questions to the DM. Thanks.
Hi, good morning, colleagues. Just to give context, right, I think I've taken some of the questions. The one in terms of the split between the Majuba Rail and roads about 70% and rails about 30%. In terms of the use of our pump storage, I think with the support from good PV resources during the day, we are seeing lesser usage, but we still use our pump storage. As you know, during the day, it's free, and with us now sitting with lots of energy in the evening, we use that to obviously fill up the dams. But if you really look at the context, 12 months ago, we were depleting these resources by midweek, okay? And traditionally, when you look at these resources, we normally fill up the dams to ensure that we have 101% on a Monday, and then we sort of deplete these reserves by Friday when the demand sort of drops, and we are back into that situation. So I've got that. That's on the other one. I don't know if there's I think that's about what I've covered on my side. Minister, you and both Deputy will cover the others.
Sure,
thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to respond on the question from, I think it was ENCA, on the electricity meters, the prepaid meters. So at this stage, Eskom had about 6.9 million meters that they needed to pre-code. The rollover for these meters is on the 24th of November this year. If those meters have not been pre-coded, they will not be able to operate. Eskom have done 6.9 million, 6.6 of the 6.9 million, so they've got about 300,000 left to pre-code. And the municipalities had 4 million meters to do. They've got about 1 million left. What needs to happen now is that users of the prepaid meters need to go and buy their prepaid electricity, and they will be provided with a code, a series of digits that they can then input into their meters, and that will allow those meters to roll over into the new cycle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks, DM. Just to Antoinette, well, you are absolutely correct. I think that the electricity tariff increases can't be sustained at this level. The pressure is even felt by middle and high income earners. So you're going to get to a situation where a multitude of people in this country just don't have the means to afford the electricity. They must make difficult choices. And I think also this ties to one of the issues that was raised. There's a relationship between the exponential tariff increases and the amount of non-technical losses, the illegal connections and the like. This is not a means of justification, but trying to understand what are some of the reasons why people are going that route. So I think, and bypassing of the meters and all of that. But just to your question, the current dispensation is such that Eskom does its own numbers. And on the basics of the agreed parameters, then they go direct to NERSA. And then NERSA then evaluates, interrogates what are the cost drivers in relation to whatever the proposed tariff increase. I think the reforms on unbundling, So it's going to help us to ensure that we are able to address the inefficiencies that can be hidden, if you like, when you lump generation, transmission, and distribution together. Once you are unbundling, you are able to account for all the costs associated. Then you are making it easy to answer that question. But just to say, what role does the ministry play? So in the current dispensation, the value chain, Eskom does what it has to do and submits to the regulator. So essentially, the minister comes after the fact. And it's not the intention of this ministry to interfere with the Eskom process. But we had said that even before you go to the regulator, I think just favor us with what that submission is. Because I think there are other questions we'll ask, being on the side of the consumer, myself and the DM, but also understanding what are the peculiarities in relation to the Eskom's own situation. And I'm sure at that point we might be able to excavate other issues that might not be within the purview of Eskom, because we do have a greater level of appreciation of what people are going through. So we'll ask those questions. Eskom, we suggest that consider those and still submit to the regulator. It's independent of us. So I can sit here and clamor about what the tariff increases are, but the regulator is working within certain parameters. And that's why the pricing policy is important, because what the regulator really does, if you come to think of it, I'm reducing a very complex situation, is to give effect to our electricity pricing policy. And out of that pricing policy, you can determine what the parameters, and then the regulator uses those parameters to evaluate the rationality or the strength of what gets to be submitted to the regulator, including from municipalities. So the long and short of it is that they have submitted, but we are raising these questions. We think we'll answer them more effectively in the context of the electricity pricing policy. Everyone in the space accepts that this can be sustained. And then on the issues of the illegal connection and the impact, yes, I mean, absolutely correct. One of the issues that is facing municipalities is what we call non-technical losses. So just the number of people who are simply using electricity, consuming it, not known by municipalities. And that places a great strain on their infrastructure. So what Bafedile was referring to, when you go to areas like Diepsloot, you mentioned them here in Gauteng, you are going to find that the city power really, it's exercising its powers to say that we don't know of you and you are consuming the electricity, and we have the obligation at city power to go and buy it from Eskom, and yet we don't have the opportunity to recover that, so you are not entitled to this. So we're going to disconnect you. So that's fine. I think city power must do that. I think what should not be misinterpreted from what we are saying, illegal connections should not be tolerated. And as the ministry will not stand in the way of any municipality that exercises that. So that's one. And then secondly, we do have an obligation to protect the poor. You have instances, I'm sure, Bafedile, when you go around. I was listening to one of your insights when you were interviewing some of the residents who were affected by this illegal connection. Says, no, but we don't have a problem of paying. We've been asking Municipality X to come and connect us. They don't want to connect us. We can only resort to doing what we are doing. Can't justify that, but it's important that we work with municipalities to ensure that there's a speedy rollout of this electrification program. I mean, let me give you a sense. I mean, when we did our numbers, we reconciled them. We had thought that the levels of penetration in the country is at 93%. So there's 7% of the households that are not connected. No, that number is not 7%. Now we know it's 14%. And this a doubling of the people not connected is largely as a result of proliferation of informality. Because in the computing, you don't do the exercise of asking the question, are you formal, are you legalized, or what? You are a household, you just don't have access to electricity. So that's something that we need to attend to. But I think the more enduring solution is to help municipalities to ensure that there's better planning. The management of urbanization is rampant, is rapid. It can be avoided. In fact, it's good for the economy. The concentration of skills, density allows for cheaper delivery of basic services. So you can see, I mean, subnational governments are far surpassing sovereign national states as drivers of the economy. So that should be encouraged, but it should be managed. And that's something that has been missing in the equation. So the impact of that buffer deal is that the more there's illegal connection, the municipality and ESCOM has designed this distribution infrastructure to accommodate 400 households. Now there's 200 households that are connected, and that's why it's placing strain. The next question that must be answered is, why didn't you pick this all along? It's coming now in winter. You'll only see the chances of seeing it is in winter when the demand is elevated. So if you like, the notifiable maximum demand, that is the total capacity on this distribution infrastructure, it's over-designed on the basis of the people who are legally connected. But because there have been greater levels of illegality, and then in winter there's extraordinary levels of consumption, that's when you are exceeding the capacity of that infrastructure. That's when you are seeing the kind of challenges we are seeing. But we should have anticipated them long time ago. That's the point we are making. But we are not here to lament. We'll work with local government. I did say that in the presidency of Mr. Stofile of Salga, we have an ally. We are confident of resolving this. And then the issues of debt payments. Yes, I made the point. So every time when we speak is how much is municipalities owing ESCOM, but what is we're not addressing is how much is owed to municipalities. Almost 5 times what the municipalities are owing to ESCOM. So municipalities are really carrying this burden, if you come to think of it. And in there's a cut, and not isolate just households. By the way, if you come in numbers, absolute numbers as debtors, there are more. In terms of rent value, I don't think they are higher than business and government put together. If we address that, you will see there's going to be a significant relief. And that's this and that intervention at local government, dissolving them or whatever the legal jargon we choose to use, pay. Government pay, provincial government, national government, pay municipalities as a bottom line. And then let's see the true picture of what is owed by citizens. And then let's make that intervention. So you can't be postponing your payments as national and provincial government, and you expect municipalities to carry you. No, it can't. So we've got an interest to protect the interest of everyone, including local government. So we'll not use this exercise to bash them, but we are going to work with them. But everyone must pay, in particular government and business, must pay the municipalities what is due to them. And yes, Monges, you are right. We also are examining the fact that municipalities and ESCOM, they are receiving this grant that is meant for free basic electricity, but there's 8 million households that are not receiving it. And then you receive it, you divert it to other things, when in fact we should be protecting the poor. So it's important that we rethink that basket and see how best we can utilize it to guarantee poor household that intervention. You will see when we come back. I don't want to preempt some of the solutions, but we know which direction we're taking. It's a repurposing of these grants to ensure that poor households benefit from renewable energy sources, sun in particular, and design a program that is going to ensure that there's an accelerated rollout of rooftop solar solutions for poor households. So as it were now, it's only me and the others who are privileged, who've got that benefit, who can afford that. But the poor don't have the means to do that. When in fact there's a grant that can be used creatively to ensure that, I'm sure Eric will clarify, I don't know which country, but I know that there was Zambia or someone who's purchasing from us. And then is an initiative by the industrialized nations in the context of making their contributions to cleaner forms of energy. They are going to place a tariff on them. And of course, then it makes them uncompetitive. And then really it means the long and short, we sitting with DTIC and see first which are those industries that are likely going to be severely affected. And we know even before we engage with them, is that you are energy-intensive industries, you are steel manufacturing, cement manufacturing, you mentioned them, are the ones that are likely going to be hard hit. So it's important that we work with those industries so that we are able to account from the sources of clean technology that will make it possible for them not to lose their market or even cement and expand their market access. So it's important that we resolve those. Of course, there are issues around reforms. You are feeding tariffs and all of that. That is going to help us to account for all forms of clean technology in the environment so that we provide a broader flow for this industry to procure cleaner forms of energy and are able to show that they've been generated using these forms of energy. And it's also how you account for it, the credibility of that process. So really there has to be some machinery that is built behind the technological interventions of what are these sources, how are we going to get them on stream, but it's also how you account for those sources of energy. On the issues of fracking, I think it's a matter best answered by the Minister Mantashe, because on the issues of exploration, it resides with that ministry. And then just a general problem issue in relation to the establishment of the ministry. I think it's a work that is underway. There's an internal government process is involved, but I think for the period, the current financial year, since the president introduced this reconfigured department until the end of the financial year, we'll be operating from an accounting point of view, financial point of view, on the back of the DMRE budget, which was approved. To the extent that you can account for some line items, we'll do that, but it still be in the context of that DMRE budget. And until level, DDG level, for as long as that the process is not complete, our DG is still the DG of DMRE. And then once that process is completed, then you start to make those appointments. Having said that, all of the things I've mentioned are not dependent on that process. I have to mention that. So I will not come here and say that the only reason why we can't move on the issues of the JIP, on the issues of the bid windows, on the issues of improving the performance of the power station is because of some administrative process. No, that's not an excuse. We'll not give it to you. It's an internal process. At the right time, we'll share with you. And then, Kenneth, on the issues around what this intervention does, the pilots and the National Treasury intervention on municipalities as part of the debt relief scheme. What we know now for a fact is that you are not just sitting with a financing problem. And one of the issues we're raising is that what that intervention does only deals with just one leg financing problem, while dealing with a bigger structural problem of the provision of electricity in the country. And then we know for a fact now, the latest numbers we have is that 78% of those municipalities that entered that program have defaulted. So that means that is not effective. So that's it's a factual. So you need a different instrument. Financing is just one leg. We are resolving a bigger problem. And that's why we say don't misdiagnose the problem. I think we're getting closer to resolving that problem. And Chris, yes, I did make the point where the team, we have engaged with the submissions. They've been consolidated. They've been synthesized. So we know what the issues are. I'm talking the IRP now. We're going to call all the people who have made those submissions into one room. So it's not going to be an exchange of correspondence, because there are substantive inputs that people are making, which we're going to take into account. They are challenging the assumptions. They are also challenging, if you like, some of the techniques that we have used for modeling. And those are very important conversation, and it could be that they are right. So it's important that we sit in one room. So we'll call them, we'll make that public. But of course, it's only, we are not reopening the process of public consultation. We are simply taking further, deepening that consultation with those that have made the written submissions. So that's where we are at. And then we'll be able to expand and work with them. And the IEP, I did say the integrated energy plan, we're working on it, ensuring that with speed, we're able to get to a point where we've got an integrated energy program it's not our intention to workshops, listening to what the players are saying, and then taking that into account so that we're able to put together. And what you characterize as a gas cliff, absolutely correct, two components. The first one is on the gas master plan, we are accepting that major deficits there. I think it needs substantive reworking, if you like, but we are not starting from a clean slate on the back of what the submissions that people have made. Again, bring them into one room and then pull together. That's the master plan. But then in the intervening period, we are facing a crisis can undermine, if you like, the intensive gas users that contribute 700 billion rand annually to the South African economy, employ upwards of 110,000. I did say we have gone to cabinet, they've noted the steps that we are taking. Now we are proceeding and we are looking really at the LNG solutions. Again, the quickest way of connecting is Mozambique, using the existing pipeline, Romco. We are working on something. We'll come back to you. We have said to the industry players, we do understand the agency, and as they have said, when we engage with them, you should have resolved this question yesterday. Accept that, but we do everything possible to address this. As soon as we have found that solution, I'm confident we'll find that interim solution soon. We'll be able to first engage with the users so that there's a collective appreciation of what we are doing and then the support of what we are doing. Because if you like that, the off-takers, 180 petajoules per annum, it's a significant number. If you resolve the issues of gas to power conversions, so it means that you can commit to greater number of offtake, greater than 180 petajoules. We think you can go to about 300 petajoules. We know that there's a relationship between volume and the cost of the molecule, and that's the number that we want to resolve. Of course, part of the conversation here, whether this is rand denominated, because you are going to sit with a currency risk there, and then you are going to sit with a commodity risk there. So it's important that that conversation we are going to have, which is a government-to-government arrangement, must be able to de-risk this so that we don't pass on this cost to the users. We know if you go LNG, it will be 3 times more expensive than natural gas. A number of them can absorb it. But others, it's going to be a pass-through, and it can have inflationary pressure. So those are the kind of issues that we are resolving. So I'm really sharing with you the complexity of that conversation. But the easiest way of addressing that is government to government. We are confident that we should be in a position to find an answer to this question. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you very much, Minister, and to the DM and Mr. Eric Schoenmakam for all the depth and the insight that they've provided in responding to these questions. We'll take the last round of questions just for follow-ups. As per usual, we'll start in the room and go to our online platform. And then in taking the responses, we'll start with Mr. Schoenmakam, who will respond to the question from the last round on the countries that are receiving power from Eskom. And then there was a question as well from Helmo on the weekly system status update, which is not available on the Eskom website. The spokesperson, Eskom spokesperson, has indicated that that will be looked into and it will be made available as soon as possible. So can we just take the questions, the last round? Yes, Antoinette? Please, Katla Hode.
My name is Katla Hode from the SABC. I also wanted to get the time frames for the deadline around the policy. And would this then see you as the department just opening it up to the people for public consultation as well? Because looking at what has been happening in Johannesburg, there's been this surcharge whereby residents are saying they're not consulted, but we see this just imposed on them. Would we see this process involving them and the likes? The other one is on nuclear. Government has in the past committed to the future of nuclear energy. Where are we with our interventions where nuclear is concerned? Is it still a player? And are we seeing greater efforts towards making this somewhat of a reality? The last one on my end would be around the just energy transition, tapping into some of the resources that were made available. For instance, France has made available resources. The Europeans have said they are available to help in terms of the country's just energy transition, the move. Where are we with that and those efforts? Are we tapping into some of these, resources that have been made available, especially across country, resources like the ones coming from Europe, France? Thank you.
Thanks, Katlawa. Takalani, will you take us through the questions online?
Thank you. Zakan, maybe to start with the reminder from Kgosientsho from News 24 about the question on the reduction in the average monthly load factor for the coal fleet per month. I think saying this question was not answered. It was from the previous round of questions. And the new questions, the first one still is coming from Kgosientsho. And the question is, what is the current contractual terms with Kawara Basa? And despite having excess capacity, Eskom is still importing on average 1 gigawatt from Mozambique. And is there a minimum of take for Eskom in the contract, and what are the costs thereof? And there's a question from Cindy Sontlabati, who is representing the Gauteng network. And the question is, can the minister give highlights on the actual cost grant guarantees it has planned for the renewable energy projects? Thanks.
Thank you, Takalani. Thank you for all the questions. As indicated, we will start with Mr. Erickson Makam, who will respond to questions from the last round, and he'll be followed by the minister. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sakani. Kyle, I think just in terms of that question, we will definitely provide a formal response just to source the data. Helmut, I just confirmed that the email has been sent to you on week 31. So it's almost real-time information coming through to me. So just to give you some feedback then in terms of the breakdown of the power that's supplied out of Eskom, the total that's being supplied out is 1,028 megawatts. And when you actually get to the breakdown of this, Botswana gets 115 megawatts, Swaziland gets 74 megawatts, Lesotho gets 39 megawatts, Mozambique gets 612 megawatts, Zambia 24 megawatts, Zimbabwe 72, Namibia 71, and then through the SAP markets there's another 21 megawatts. So I think that's just giving you a complete breakdown of what is of that 1,028 megawatts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So there's the ideal, Antoinette, ideally with regards, and Katleho, with regards to the electricity pricing policy, would want to conclude it so that it influences the next cycle of tariff submission. But it's highly unlikely on the back of what Katleho has observed. It's a highly regulated space, so we really want to democratize the conversation. So whilst we are chasing the timelines, I think it's important that we are opening it up to everyone to make a contribution. And then there are those communities that will not be able to make a scientific submission. And I'm saying this with the greatest of respect. So they might not be able to write to us and give us a fully fledged, thoroughly thought out scientific reason why we must go one route as opposed to the other. We want those communities to have a voice. And the only way that they'll have a voice is to go into those communities and listen to them. In whatever way they construct their argument, I think we'll be able to decipher. I think going to give credibility to the work that we're doing. Because this electricity pricing policy, what it must do, it must agitate communities to come on board so that they are able to share their lived experiences. So I don't expect someone from my rural village in Ramokgopa, someone from an informal settlement in Kayamnandi to make a 30-page submission on what this is, but they must be listened to. The ministry are committed to that. I think behind this, we want to get to a stage when we get to that policy, as many people as possible are able to own up to the policy and its implications. And then when we come much later on the back of the tariff arrangement and the fact that you ought to pay, you are part of this conversation. So it's important. So we'll map out what that is, taking into account the point I'm making, the sensitivities around inclusiveness of the exercise, but also the speed of resolving this. So myself and the DM are alive to that Katego. And then on the nuclear, yes, committed to that. I did say that we are working on a procurement framework, so it's an internal conversation on how best to do that. I'll brief you and the country on where we are at, and then when we get to release that framework. We had wanted to, remember the last time, the promise was that it will be done by July or so. No, it has to be having head sight of what the team is proposing. We really need to make it a bit more robust. Because remember what on the nuclear question, the biggest issue is on the transparency of the process. What has soiled this, and people having their own misgivings about the procurement. So the technical and scientific basis of nuclear is established. So the issue is the process of procurement and the transparency in that process. And I say we must build every step of the way, transparency of the process, without compromising the process itself. By that I mean there could be information that can be shared publicly, and I'll let you know. Could be proprietary information. It could be what the one sponsor says is going to be, what the distinctive nature of their offering is, if you like, what sets them apart, can be public. But with regards to what is the cost to the country relative to other forms, what is the opportunity cost of going this route, what does it mean, that will be shared to the country. I'm making that undertaking. That we will do, because I think this process fails and succeeds on the best of the transparency component. The science is established. Every serious scientist will tell you, no, this is clean, it's more efficient, from an operational point of view, cheaper. From a financing point of view, the capital cost could be prohibitive. Can the country afford it? Remember, we're talking of the pace and scale that the country can afford. I think that's important. And I'll show you when of course, you do the procurement framework, you go out to the market responds, and then you are going to have a sense if you are answering the scale, the pace, and whether we can afford it. That answer will be responded to once the market comes back. It's not responded to in the framework, because it's the market that must come back, and then we answer that question. And then, Katlego, you're absolutely right. The point I was making earlier on with the JIP, myself, and the DM and the team, is that there are offerings that sits there that the country can benefit from. The issues of resources, technical resources, the issues of concession, the grant on this and that. We are not taking advantage of that. And then we're having an academic conversation. We did say that on the JIP implementation plan that was adopted by Cabinet 2023, it takes into account country interest. We have resolved that question. So what we must do then is to implement. And what myself and the DM have agreed, so we are alike here, we are not in the process of coming with new ideas when there are existing ones that they have not been applied. Or you can refine the existing ones. To the extent that you need a new policy framework, like the pricing policy, then we will do that. But let's do. There are a few things that we must do. Don't have to wait for new ideas. Let's do them. And that's where we're at. We'll work with the partner. We will be doing. We'll pull everyone in government. But the bottom line is that we will be doing. And I think we've mastered the art of doing. And we're going to do that. I didn't get the last one on government guarantees, but one, of course, I'm going to assume give it my own interpretation. On the JIP, if it relates to that, you resolve the issues that National Treasury, the country is not in a position to provide such guarantees. So a solution that is guarantee-free is a preferred one, of course. There are other variables that you must address. Credit-enhancing instruments is going to help us. But with regards, if that speaks to the rollout of solar solutions to the poor, we already have a grant allocation annually of 5 billion rand. That is meant for electrification. So we're thinking of electrification differently. The conventional way is to think of the ESCOM wires, the municipal wires. But technology tells you that, no, you've got the sun. There's a different way that you can think of this penetration and universal access for people in Kgosientsho, for people in the village of Ramokgopa. You don't necessarily have to wait for a municipality to say, no, we're going to bring a transformer, or we're going to do the wires. When the technology is there, you can put a solar solution that integrates both inverters and batteries. Some of them are produced here in the country. Phenomenal technology that exists in the country. We'll exploit that within the parameters of how we can procure them, ensure that we use a local production capacity to ensure that we roll out energy access. But what that also does, it helps to solve the problem. They are not necessarily connected. Of course, over time you'll connect them, because I don't think that you can succeed being away from the grid. Everyone is grid tight. Most people are grid tight because during periods of inclement weather, you still need to draw from the grid. But given the number of days that we have the sun, the quality of the sun that we have, the amount of hours in a day that we have the sun, this is a resource that is not fully exploited, and we are going to extend that to the poor. That 5 billion rand will benefit the poor. And then you resolve the issues of non-payment. You resolve the issues of free basic electricity, because it will be built in that mechanism. And then we're able to close that 14% of people who are not having access to energy. We whittle it down to something that we can be exceptionally proud of. Anything less than 5%, I think it's something that we're looking forward to. We'll work out ourselves internally what is that number of universal access by the time the 6th administration ends. And then once we get to that number, it will be a scientifically thought out number, given the resources that we have, the capacity that exists in the country, and then the percentage that we want to bring down. And then having resolved that matrix, we'll be able to come to a reasonable and yet ambitious number on how we can increase universal access in the country. But let me take the opportunity to thank everyone once more. Thank you very much to members of the media for making time. We wish you a very productive